Hello, hello. Uta Hagen here of Trans Widow, Uta Hagen YouTube channel, and WordPress blog, utahagengrasswidow.wordpress.com. That will be in the notes. I'm going to read a little preface for the next Trans Widow testimony that will appear here on my channel. It's one where she was very seriously physically and sexually abused. And she requested my survey, 20 questions to ask a trans widow, and then she answered them as clearly and honestly and straightforward as possible. I'm just going to read you here as a preface to part 2 of Debbie Hayton, that is Dr. David, who is calling himself an apostate, but he's an apologist. And what I want him to recognize is that he's an apologist for exactly this kind of sexual predator who is now the ex-husband of my next trans widow, number 57. Thank you, my dear. We are brainstorming your pen name right now. You're number 57. Question 10. Did he attack you physically? Please indicate whether it was choking, shoving, punching, etc., bruises, and if police were called. The police were not involved at all in this, despite the fact that this dude is very violent. This is her answer. He did attack me physically many times. He would be shoving and punching me. I had bruises on my face. I never called the police. I was trying to leave him after these episodes, but I would come back because I had no place to stay with the kids. 11. Did he force unwanted sex with you? It happened a few times when it was just sex, when I said no, but he continued. But what was happening more often, he would force me to do BDSM, that is bondage, something in sadomasochism, a type of kink. Now I'm not remembering what the D is. Domination, bondage, domination, sadomasochism, BDSM. Force me to do BDSM sex with him. He was saying that he was rude to me. He was hitting me because I do not perform BDSM. That if I tie him up, use a strap-on and other practices, he will be a good spouse to me. He will listen to me. I will be his boss. But I was never good enough, so he had to hit me again. Just from the way that you write this, my dear, this is very plausible and credible to me. Now we're going to segue into this part 2 of DebbieDavid Hayton, who just published a book called Transsexual Apostate. And he's getting lots of press, and he's getting sort of both negative and positive attention, which is, I believe, what he seeks, because he admits that it might have been a mistake. He admits that he is a man and he doesn't care about pronouns. But I'm sure that he gets a little bit of a zing from the fact that in the articles that are being written about him now, the writers are using the Debbie name and female pronouns, as is his still. The marriage continued as his wife Stephanie does. And I printed out their lovely wedding picture. They look like a very happy couple. They later had a daughter and two sons who are now possibly out of the house, mostly in their 20s. Here is a quote from Mr. Hayton. Now I realize the whole premise on which I transitioned was wrong. Trans women are not women. Yet I turned my life and my family's lives upside down, causing them shock, embarrassment, and upset. Looking back now, I realize because I didn't need to transition. My grandmother would have said, I would have told you, but you had to learn the hard way. And here is a picture for this Daily Mail article that they posed for. If you ask me, the smile on Stephanie's face here is just not the full joyous smile she had in her wedding picture. You'll notice that she's doing the maternal positioning of gesturing him towards her and turning her head to look at the camera. He is facing the camera face on, and you'll see this male hand with her female hand in it, and I assume, it looks very posed to me, I assume that the photographer placed that there. There is another picture. Let's see if I can find it. Here it is, where they are at home sometime after their marriage. And again, Stephanie, very nice, joyous smile. And he looks pretty natural. He's not going to become an actor based on his male looks, but he looks better, if you ask me, in his male self. Okay, so I'm going to change where this writer from the Daily Mail wrote she. Okay, this is a quote from DebbieDavid. He laughs ruefully. I do like my body. He adds, I much prefer it now. He is just shy of 6 foot in his size 9 ballet flats with long silver hair, clear skin, and an imposing bosom, long legs. The adoration by the press is notable. Stephanie, who is pretty, tall, and serene, with a river of long dark hair, says she is no longer romantically attracted to Debbie as a trans woman. The feeling is not shared. Do you still fancy Stephanie? I ask DebbieDavid. Oh, yes, he says, without hesitation. So the lack of physical intimacy, says this reporter, must be really hard for you? He says, yes, it is. I thought Stephanie was beautiful when I first saw her. I still do. So you are celibate now? Yes, and I'm sad because of what was lost. What was lost, not what I took away from my marriage. I regret that. There are no other women, no affairs. Straying is not an option. We've both made sacrifices because we love each other profoundly. What I want is the relationship with Stephanie. And then there's this talk about going out for a walk before it rains and the wonderful companionship and intellectual intimacy. Okay, so Stephanie had written in to Parliament regarding the Gender Recognition Act, and she does mention some of the unreasonable behavior that trans widows have to put up with. She says, I suggest that there should be a simpler form to complete, which gives a quicker divorce, rather than waiting 2 years for desertion or unreasonable behavior. So, but on the other hand, DebbieDavid never filled that out. Somehow he got the operation with the inversion of his penis to make it into a tube that is called a vagina, which doesn't at all serve the way a female body part called the vagina does in sex or in the other purposes of being the birth canal. But he didn't fill it out. She says, using this, she doesn't say my husband. She says, my spouse does not have a GRC, a gender recognition certificate or something. This lack has made no difference regarding employment, social situations, or family. Now, this is interesting because when this form is filled out, it's supposed to be taken to the spouse, and the spouse checks off whether, typically it's the wife, whether she wants to continue as a now same-sex marriage or whether she wishes to annul the marriage. And I've been a proponent of annulment for trans widows in a speedy and inexpensive path because typically the lengthy divorces, at least in the States, are another form of financial abuse that they are subjecting us to. So when his surgery happened, their daughter was 15, the boys were 12 and 10. They never named the children, good for them. Okay, so this writer continues. Stephanie acted like a single parent, going alone to school events while DebbieDavid sat apart to spare their children's embarrassment. Now, my ex was very much in your face. He would come and plop himself down next to me. He made it very, very difficult and awkward for me. He went to events where the parents are coming and interacting with the children and reading to them, and he monopolized our son when I had taken a day off of work. His schedule was more flexible. He could show up and just work an extra hour later. I was a teacher, and so when I wanted to go to a parent thing at the school, I had to take a day off, and he never respected that. Neddy did not respect that at all. And so, DebbieDavid, you need to realize that you are just one man who decided not to just violate the trust as much as your typical man ideating a female persona. Meanwhile, at home, Stephanie felt as if she was negotiating a delicate path between two teenagers, working out their roles in life. One was my 15-year-old daughter, the other was 44 and unmanageable. At least you're honest. By now, DebbieDavid was a zealous convert to makeup and women's fashions. I booked a consultant with a personal shopper at Debenhams. I'm sure it's not a cheap place. Explaining I was a man who was going to transition. I overcompensated and bought all this makeup, and they're desperate to advise you because you'll spend a lot of money. Right. There you are, 3 children, little house, expensive Britain. But no, you have to go, nothing but the best. I bought everything, blusher, BB cream, which I don't know what that is, eyeliner, eyeshadow. Okay, and by then I think I was resigned to what was happening, says Stephanie. But Debbie wasn't aware of the nuances of dressing differently for evening and daytime. Oh, she's a consultant too. Even with a teen, you're cautious of saying, that's a nice outfit, but not very sensible for school. My father would just say, you can't go out of the house like that. Go back into your bedroom and find another thing that I have paid for in your closet so that you can be dressed when you go out from our home. But that was my father. Oh, God. So she wanted to say that's a special top, but not one for daytime. Debbie did not realize either that you don't sit with your knees apart when you wear a skirt. These things are drilled into girls before they grow up. Were you aware of how insufferable you were? I asked. DebbieDavid, says the Daily Mail reporter. DebbieDavid says, I don't think I was. I just needed advice that most women in their 40s aren't used to giving their spouses. Notice how this turns into how difficult Stephanie is being. Today, the most remarkable thing, perhaps, about Debbie and Stephanie is the palpable ease with they coexist. Lots of people mistake them for lesbians, though Debbie's birth certificate still records her sex as male. I'll leave that her in. Stephanie says, we are no longer man and wife, but we still think of ourselves as a couple. And I guess the book is 17 pounds. It looked like a rather slim volume to me. I'm sure one could read it in a day. I was in a very bad way, confirms DebbieDavid. There was a fast goods train that came through the station. This must be like what do you call that? A freight train, we call it. And I used to think I could jump in front of it. You put yourself in desperate situations to prove how bad things are. Note that language. To prove how bad things are. This is the emotional blackmail of the suicide narrative, which the so-called gender therapists suggest and script for their patients. I think in my last one about DebbieDavid, I mentioned how a chair, the four legs of the chair, represented the three children and the family. A therapist put it in the middle of the room, and when DebbieDavid decided, I'm going to become Debbie, I'm doing it, then all DebbieDavid had to do was move the chair out of the way. And then, boom, that's the watershed event. Oh, I'm getting a little overexcited, dropping my prompts here. Okay. Was there a point when Stephanie, so they become one person. Stephanie or Stavid. Was there a point when Stephanie felt divorce was the only option? Yes, it was April 2013. Now his surgeries were 2016, she says. DebbieDavid was just doing things without consulting me. And if he didn't ask me, my view didn't matter. He was a firebrand, a whirlwind, and he had been like that for over a year. Okay, so no one is putting any boundaries. No one is recognizing how this cross-dressing man with his autogynephilia, his sexual fetish, is damaging his family. And this is what I predict. Men like Neddy are going to claim to be a DebbieDavid. They're going to lie and claim that they said, I never asked my children to call me something else, but Dad, I never did that. I gave my wife options, all this kind of stuff. This is where I feel my response and my reaction to DebbieDavid Hayton is necessary. Also, there's this thing about how he avoids the question of whether to write Miss or Mrs. As the way to address him because he has a PhD in physics. So you can say doctor. So he'll say Dr. Debbie Hayton. He doesn't say Dr. Hayton and omit the Debbie, or say Dr. D. Hayton, right? So that is, disingenuous and hypocritical, if you ask me. Feel free to put a link here and put it out on Debbie David's Twitter, whatever. And also Stella O'Malley, who I still regard as hypocritical and disingenuous. You talk yourself into believing the only solution is transitioning. It's not just that you talk yourself into it. You go to a so-called expert, a mental health practitioner who helps you to talk yourself into it. Okay. Okay, so Stephanie says, I don't want to seem like an abused wife, but I felt I had no power. I had to go along with it or divorce. That's absolutely true. And I knew that I would lose my soul, my mind, possibly my life if I stayed. And I know while Stephanie is trying to be honest, she's really not helping the trans widows. And I have data on 57 of us now. So Debbie David said, my mental health was breaking down. The compulsion to transition was overwhelming. I became increasingly distant from Stephanie and reality. The transition stories I saw on the internet transfixed me, of course, because everybody's modifying their picture, making themselves look thinner than they really are, and doing the exact good positioning with the right light and stuff like that. and having, the clothes that consultant helped you buy at Debbingham's. So people like me, engineers, medics, teachers, were becoming their true selves, or so they assured me. There was no shortage of online advice and before and after photos. So who is doing the work in the household while he's got his nose in the computer constantly? His wife, the mother of the children. Oh, I was jealous and desperate to follow. Transition became an imperative. I was going 100 times too fast for Stephanie. I was growing my hair long. I told senior managers then, and then a few colleagues at my school that I was going to transition. Okay, then Stephanie says this revealing thing about that time period, saying, and I'm changing her to his personal hygiene was rubbish. Coming home from school, he'd tell me, I almost stepped under a bus. So those are two different things. She doesn't elaborate, or any details are edited out. Here's Debbie David continues. When I first told Stephanie my feelings, it was terrifying, but also liberating, of course. The rush was addictive, and to her distress, I told other people. It was really hard for her, says Debbie, with understatement. Marriage involves intimacy on so many levels. You go to your spouse for advice, but I was not. I was going to chat groups, getting advice from the internet, rather than my wife. Both Stephanie and Debbie David have PhDs in physics. They use the title doctor. I already told you about that. Debbie David first recalls being drawn to women's clothes at the age of 3. Then a boy called David, he furtively dressed in his mom's tights. The desire to wear women's clothes, which he thought would pass, actually escalated. Okay, not passing like pass as the opposite sex, but pass as dissipate in time. Okay. I don't quite understand this because a 3-year-old putting on his mom's tights is going to get all tangled up in her legs. He's going to not be that big. Okay. Okay, so Stephanie recalls saying to him, you said it had happened once or twice in the past and not since. I wasn't aware it was a current thing or that it could recur. This is regarding that at one point when they were in the dating process, he told her that once or twice he dressed in women's clothes. So now don't continue this relationship if dude tells you that, oh, yeah, I have to tell you, da da da. Because often they excuse themselves. They don't tell the real truth. They say it was just a passing thing. I just want to tell you to be truthful, but they're not really being truthful. Would Stephanie consider an affair? She says, no, but I have very good friendships with men that are not sexual. What if someone decides to try to rescue her? I hope it happens. I hope he has a lot of money and a big house and is good in bed. On Saturday, the Mail published the first extract from Debbie David's incendiary new book, Transsexual Apostate, in which he graphically described the surgery, which was in 2016, in which his male genitals, they say her male genitals, I mean, please, in which his male genitals were repurposed. What a euphemism. Repurposed to create an aesthetic and functional facsimile of female genitalia. Okay, let me just explain once again, as I have done before, about the female sexual response, which cannot be recreated through surgery. The female sexual response involves the area of your labia and clitoris, and I'm going to use technical medical language, and your vagina becoming I think the technical word is engorged, hot, full of blood, getting you ready for whatever else of this process is going to be. For heterosexuals, it might be sexual intercourse involving the insertion of his penis into your vagina, which, if done slowly, is really lovely and magnificent. But men need to be reminded to slow down. That's my little word of advice. So I am going out for a stick walk. Thank you. New subscribers, so many, and old loyal stalwarts. Please like, subscribe, and share, and let your trans widow friends know that I'm here to tell our stories. I have here the only data in the world on trans widows and our experiences, which unfortunately now that puts us up to 21 of 57 who were sexually assaulted by lingerie wearing husband.